Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, if you are a Facebook user, go over to Wrestler Unstoppable and check out this totally free interactive game. Totally free, no cost out of pocket. Create your own wrestlers, sign contracts, get involved in storylines, headline pay-per-views, create your own corporation. If you want to have a brand wars, you can do that. So anything you could possibly want in the world of professional wrestling, all available for free at Wrestler Unstoppable. And also, while you're at it, if you want to become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family, shoot over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast and join the family today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We are going live at 9:05. Don't forget, if you have never checked out our homepage, we are at frowrestling.com, where you can preview ahead of our episodes all the content we're going to discuss, topics of interest, and while you're at it, if you go there and you don't see something being addressed that you'd love for us to talk about, or you just have some interesting perspective you want to give us, by all means, go to our Pro Wrestling Sound Off line at 267-642-1160 and give us your questions, your comments, all that you could possibly offer. We'd love to hear from you guys and get your thoughts into the show. So tonight, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Some people actually sent me some comments this week. I did not do my typical Raw and SmackDown review shows. And the reason for that is we put up the Donovan Dijak interview last week, which got a huge pop. Thank you to all you listeners who tuned into that. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview, that episode. And then we had that really cool experience at another one of those Worldwide Wrestling Alliance shows at Zern's Farmers Market last Saturday night. And I had to get that up for you guys, which was just a really cool experience and event to be at. So when it comes to Raw and SmackDown, I had a little bit of dialogue with one of our wonderful loyal listeners about whether or not I was missing the boat by not doing a Raw and SmackDown review show. Here's the thing. I think that all the listeners who tune into my show watch Raw and SmackDown to begin with. I will definitely touch on key parts from those shows tonight in tonight's episode, but I don't really think that the doing a recap every week of just those shows has a lot of utility when we've got so much to talk about. There's so much going on in the world of professional wrestling right now. It could be any company, Ring of Honor, Global Force Wrestling, Lucha Underground. There's news for all of them. And that's without WWE and New Japan and all that. So I'm going to try to make sure that I find a way to address as much content as possible. And that way, we can get to the news that some people don't necessarily have time to rifle through the internet and find. And I want to bring you guys as much news and rumors as I can. And I've been told, at least by some of my wonderful fans, that is the thing that they like the most. That listening to Raw and SmackDown isn't necessarily as important. So I hope you guys are okay with that format. I'm sure I'll still do some review shows here and there, but in the meantime, I want to make sure I get you guys as much news as I can. Okay, so tonight, for those who've been on the page, you already know there's a few things we're going to get to. In addition, tonight, I actually have a segment at the end of the episode for fan questions. Things that have been sent to me over the week. I want to make sure that I get to address as many of those as I can. Obviously, I have time constraints I have to stick to as well, and life has been crazy lately with all the things going on in my world, but I do want to make sure I address questions you guys have. I know I have some this week from my dear loyal follower, my good buddy Harold out in St. Louis. He sent me some great stuff this week, and I gotta give a shout out to my buddy over in Hatfield who has just been sending me so much information. I've been really trying to put an emphasis on learning about smaller independent promotions, and he has been fantastic, sending me leads to check out and companies to look at, and hopefully at some point I can make an overture to some of those and maybe do some shows from their locations as well. But in the meantime, to all my fans who send me questions, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. You guys are you're the steering wheel in this podcast. I could sit here and I could just run down news all day, but the reality is, if no one's into it, it really holds no purpose. So thank you to everyone who sends me questions every week. You guys are amazing. You make this very rewarding for me. It's as much enjoyment for me seeing your questions, hopefully, as the podcast itself is for you guys. So I hope that's the way it works for you as well. I'm going to start with the Raw Go Home episode, which is coming up this Monday night, and I have some issues with it. And here's the problem. WWE has been complaining constantly frustrated with their lower attendance numbers. Now, I understand that this past week on Raw, there was some conjecture in interview segments with Roman Reigns and John Cena about, Roman Reigns claiming attendance is up, money is up. That's nonsense, okay? That's what they throw that out there for the not so smart marks, the people who love the product but don't actually do the background work to find out what's really going on in WWE. WWE, their viewership is down. Raw is down. SmackDown's up slightly, but it's still not to the levels that SmackDown was 10 years ago. In addition to that, you have a pay-per-view coming up this week that, whether people realize it or not, you've got 2 matches on that card that are main event WrestleMania quality level matches. John Cena versus Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman are good enough to headline WrestleMania. So with all that being said, this week's Go Home episode of Raw, there will be no John Cena on the card, and there will be no Brock Lesnar on the card. How do you book a major pay-per-view with 2 potentially once-in-a-lifetime angles and not book your 2 biggest acts to be at the go-home episode of this show? It's absolutely ridiculous. If it was me, if I'm WWE creative, you do whatever you have to do to get those 2 people there for the go-home episode. People are dying to see Braun and Brock. I know I am. They've built it organically. It has looked good. The way they did the last pay-per-view with the Fatal 4-Way and making Brock look relatively in danger, making Braun look so strong. The way they've built it the last couple weeks with Brock coming out and acting like he was ready for Braun, and Braun getting in the ring and totally decimating him. That also builds to the intrigue of this match. Brock Lesnar is going into this match as a decided underdog. And honestly, I don't know how they're going to book this. I know what the odds are, and I'll get into the odds later in the week when I do a prediction show. But what I don't see is, I don't see any room for guarantees at this point. I could see where Brock could win this match, and here he's been fighting all this time, and he gets one of those really hard-fought wins and walks out as champion. Because, we all know Brock versus Roman Reigns is, at least right now, the tentative plan for WrestleMania. There's been some speculation about some other possibilities, but that's the immediate plan. And at the same time, John Cena and Roman Reigns, that's something that, the odds makers are heavily favoring Roman Reigns in. But here's the thing. If you keep beating John Cena with every new talent that comes down the pike, how do you build him to face Jinder Mahal in January at the Royal Rumble if you have him lose all except for the Baron Corbin match since he's been back? I mean, let's think about that for a minute. I understand he gets a disqualification win over Braun Strowman, but you and I both know that means nothing. He essentially lost his feud to AJ Styles, despite the fact that he was the last one to walk out of those singles matches as champion. He lost many more than he won. He lost I shouldn't say he lost. He beat Rusev, but what is that? That feud was done 2 years ago when Rusev actually meant something. Maybe even 3 years ago, because my brain's fried today. But the reality is, he's never booked strong. He lost to Shinsuke Nakamura. You know what I mean? He's losing to guys and giving away free matches that could be pay-per-view level matches consistently. And that's a problem if you want John Cena to be seriously taken as a competitor for the World Championship. I don't care if it's Jinder Mahal or anybody as champion. If Shinsuke Nakamura is totally tearing apart John Cena, and let's face it, in that match, Nakamura looked great. So Nakamura faces Cena and wins strong. Then he goes and faces Jinder Mahal, and he loses. Now they're going to face each other again at Hell in a Cell. If Nakamura doesn't win again, what does that say about John Cena going against Jinder Mahal? I don't like the booking of everything. And Brock is Brock. He's as tough as it comes. But man, the way they've built Braun Strowman, I don't know what to expect. So we're gonna have to see how these matches obviously shake out at No Mercy, but the whole point of bringing this topic up was I'm not thrilled with the Go Home episode not having Cena or Brock available for the fans to see. That's something that you don't see happen at a New Japan Pro Wrestling show, where all of their premium talent is at every single show. And if they don't have a singles match and a storyline for you, you somehow end up in like a 6 or 8 or 10-man tag just so the fans can still see you. I sometimes feel like the New Japan Pro Wrestling talent are significantly more committed to the brand and to the art form and to the mystique of professional wrestling than a significant portion of the WWE locker room, and it's really frustrating. I'm going to move on to another WWE tidbit, the Mike Kanellis situation. So, look, Mike Kanellis comes in, and if you've been a fan of his work, whether it was Ring of Honor or Impact Wrestling or even on the Independents or wherever, Mike Kanellis is a stud. Okay, he's a solid talent. He's been all over the world. New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor. You know, the only places he hasn't been, you wouldn't know of because he's been everywhere. And so he's a guy who has a track record, proven in-ring ability, and that's what attracted WWE to him in the first place. Now, he gets to WWE and they give him this ridiculous storyline where he and his wife are just oozing with love and affection. You know what? That's beautiful. Keep that in your bedroom. Okay? This venue, WWE's ring, is not for that. Okay? And especially when you already had Miz and Maurice out there playing up the lovey-dovey couple thing. And so he was booked into a situation where I felt like he was going to look weak to begin with. He was put into a feud with Sami Zayn, who has also been buried since making it to SmackDown. So a win there didn't mean anything. And then he lost to him in the rematch. Sami Zayn has since been buried beyond belief. We'll get to that a little later. But Mike Kanellis has virtually disappeared from WWE programming. Now, he has been at some house shows, but he's not on television. And so people began to speculate, and it was said that, his wife announced that he had gone to the hospital, so a rehab facility for some pain pill addiction, and, God willing, he'll be able to kick that and really get back to being the Mike Kanellis he's been for many, many years, So I'm hoping that's not an issue. But Mike Bennett, he's been for years. I hate the Kanellis thing. But the word coming out of all the different dirt sheets, and I'm going to get this out of the way because I got an email again from somebody saying, hey, you're stealing our story. Look, here's the reality of professional wrestling news stories. The news that you read, I don't care where you go. So here's my shout out to all the sources, quote unquote sources, that I get this from. Now I want you to follow me on this thought process. Certain website, and I won't mention their name, gets frustrated that I report on the stories that they report on. Now I need you to understand, the Raw Go Home episode, the Cena Brock issue, that's my opinion as well. But I saw that it was reported. I gave you my opinion on it. But the fact that they're not going to be there is just generic news. I saw that on eWrestlingNews.com, WrestleZone.com, Wrestling Inc., Cage Side Seats, and PWIOnline.com. So 5 different websites had that story that John Cena and Brock Lesnar were not going to be at Raw. That being said, how can that be original content for 5 different internet locations? It can't be. They're all borrowing from the same sources. Now, if a particular podcast says something, I try to kick out a recognition to that podcast because that's where we're getting it from. But the reality is, my sources typically are many of the websites you guys can read if you really want to. Go for it. Some of them are great. Some of them are terrible. But I try to give you my spin on the stories that are trending on all the sites. And there are apparently one of them, one of the 5 I just mentioned, got frustrated with that. Now, I will tell you, the other 4 have been amazing. I've sent requests for them to review my content, tell me if they like what I've been doing, if they could give me any pointers, tips, or anything like that could help improve the show. And I think that's been very helpful, and I thank them greatly. And I'm not, again, like I said before, I'm not going to mention names, but the ones who help me out, they know who they are. And if they hear this episode, thank you so much for helping an aspiring podcaster and a diehard wrestling fan live out a little bit of my dream vicariously through this podcast. At the same time, the one that didn't, they know who they are, and shame on you for being so grumpy about a guy who literally, I have 375 followers on Spreaker. Thank you to every single one of you. 320 subscribers on YouTube. Thank you to each and every one of you. A few more on various other sites. You're all amazing, and I don't do this for those 5 websites. I do it for you. So thank you guys for supporting me. I had to get that 2 cents out there because it's been bugging me since I got the email, and I've said my piece. Back to the news. So the Kanellis thing. Apparently, the real issue here is that in the back, they are so frustrated with the way his conditioning was when he appeared in the shows to begin with, that he wasn't in ring shape. He had kind of let himself go while he was off from Impact Wrestling before he came to WWE, and now, the situation is that it's kind of like one of those, like, you never get a second chance to make a first impression things. What I would love to see them do is to ditch this whole being in love thing and put him with somebody, develop him as a tag team. If you can't stand Baron Corbin anymore, put Baron Corbin with Mike Kanellis. I will actually touch on that in a moment because there's something else about Baron Corbin I want to talk about. But do something with Mike Kanellis. He's too good not to be used. I'm going to move on to something else from SmackDown that's really been working my nerves this week. I'm reading the different sheets, and they're talking about Hulk Hogan gave mad respect to Vince McMahon this week on Twitter after taking that insane headbutt from Kevin Owens on SmackDown. Now, for me personally, that SmackDown episode felt just like the very first time Stone Cold Steve Austin stunned Vince McMahon. That's what it felt like. It felt organic, it felt real, and if you watch that in slow motion, and I mean this, if you still have it on a DVR or something of that nature, watch it in slow motion. Kevin Owens slams the headbutt, Vince McMahon's back hits the mat, and if you watch his forehead, I literally did this frame by frame, you can see the blood emerging to the surface and then bursting because so much blood flow came out so quickly. That was busting him open the hard way. That was a legitimate headbutt that busted Vince McMahon open. And I love the fact that Vince McMahon, even at 70 whatever years old, 73, 74, whatever he is at these days, 76, I don't even know, whatever his age is, the fact that he's still willing to take a shot like that is just fantastic. Kudos to Vince McMahon. I don't get to say that very often, and I probably should say it more than I do, but it was awesome to see that moment. It felt organic. It felt real. It felt like Kevin Owens really did hate him, just like Stone Cold. It felt like he really did hate him. The whole segment was great. Stephanie coming out was great. The only thing that frustrated me, I thought Shane should have been there in some capacity, come through the crowd or something, or Triple H even. That would have been even better. Triple H, the guy who handed Kevin Owens the Universal title, comes out and he stands up for Vince McMahon. Forget this Shane McMahon feud. You want to pop the crowd? Hype that angle. Triple H gave you the Universal title, and this is what you do to the man who put him in his position. Now Triple H is going to seek some revenge. I know he's supposed to be a bad guy, but people would pop for him as a face for that particular feud. So, love that spot. Hate hearing on social media so many people, oh, it's nonsense. Somebody actually claimed that he had like one of those artificial like skin grafting looking Hollywood things on his forehead that was filled with like artificial blood, and somehow they popped it when he headbutted them. No, look at it in slow motion. It legitimately was busted him wide open. Going to talk about the NXT Women's Championship. This has been a topic of conversation for weeks now, ever since Asuka's injury. It looks like, coming out of the Mae Young Classic, Kairi Sane is going to be in the title picture at the next NXT TakeOver event right before Survivor Series. She's going to take on 3 other NXT superstars. She doesn't have the track record, some of Ember Moon or somebody like Peyton Royce. And right now, because I'm a genius and I didn't write it down, the other young lady who's going to be competing in that match. These 4 women are going to tear the house down for the NXT Women's Championship. I will be honest with you, I am hoping that Ember Moon walks out with the title. I'm beginning to think that Kairi Sane is going to be the one who comes out with the title. I don't know that I support that decision. I know she looks a lot like Asuka. She wrestles a lot like Asuka with the physicality. And I know they love her flying elbow. But the reality is, Ember Moon has earned it. She's main evented shows with Asuka. She's a great draw. She's got a unique look, and she's a great worker. And I think she's the one who deserves that championship, but I get this feeling, the funny suspicion, that they're going to go another direction. But speaking of the women's division, we had the Mae Young Classic, Kairi Sane winning the Mae Young Classic, which is awesome. I'm really thrilled for her. It helps launch her WWE career. And what I found the most interesting about that night, watching that Tuesday night, was Ronda Rousey's comments after the Mae Young Classic. So Ronda comes out, and right away, of course, the commentators, the interviewer, wants to know what Ronda Rousey's involvement in WWE could be, asking her if she's, basically, whether it was directly said or not. We understand where they were going with this, whether or not she's coming to WWE. And in total class act form, Ronda Rousey says how tonight is about Shayna Baszler, and she wants to focus on her, not on Ronda Rousey and all this, and she totally dodges the question in a really classy way. Now, the word backstage is the reason that they're being so shady about this is because all the plans for the 4 horsewomen versus the other 4 horsewomen have been scrapped because Shayna Baszler hasn't signed her contract yet with WWE. Now, in an update to that, she was backstage at WWE programming this week, Raw and SmackDown. So you would think that she must be getting close. She's going to sign a contract at some point. And when she does, I think that's when we'll see that feud or that opportunity for a match, hopefully by the time we get to Survivor Series. I think that's when we'll see that materialize. But I think it's kind of shady on WWE's part. Like, if you've got this blockbuster 4-on-4 women match that everybody wants to see. You're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I remember watching Beyond the Mat years ago, and they said this organization is worth more money than the New York Islanders, the Rangers, the Yankees, the Mets, all put together. Well, if you're making that much freaking money, start spending some of it to make your fans happy and give them what they want to see. You do whatever you got to do to sign Shayna Baszler. Even if she flops, the amount of money you'll make from the pay-per-view seeing the horsewomen versus horsewomen is going to make up for that flop. That's what you got to do, and they don't seem to want to do that right now with this particular angle, which is very frustrating. I'm going to move on to Global Force Wrestling. The big news this week is they were launching the Global Force Network, and I'm thrilled. I think it's a great idea for someone like me. I don't mind watching the same matches over and over and over. I live on the WWE Network. I watch everything that I watched when I was a kid, and I rewatch it and rewatch it. I'll be honest with you. Some people typically ask me what my favorite matches all time are, and I'll tell you, when I pop on the WWE Network, I cannot watch The Ultimate Warrior save Hulk Hogan from Psycho Sid and Papa Shango enough times. I've watched that a million times over and over and over. I can't get enough, and it's going to sound like I'm an Ultimate Warrior diehard, but I can't get enough of watching the Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam come out and throw out an open challenge and the Warrior come out and win the Intercontinental title. I can't get enough of things like that. So I think having Global Force Network allows me to see AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels or Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe. Matches that were just insane. And I'll be honest with you, one of the hidden gems, I shouldn't say hidden, but I think less appreciated and almost forgotten gems of early Impact Wrestling is the insane talent level of America's Most Wanted. Great tag team. James Storm still wrestling in Impact Wrestling, and his tag team partner comes to WWE and they put him into an incredibly horrible gimmick, Braden Walker, which didn't work. So Chris Harris ended up going back to TNA and it never was the same, and he really hasn't done anything important since, but AMW was phenomenal. Well, having this network will give me the opportunity to see that. Now, would I prefer the WWE to buy it and put it onto the network? Yeah, because I don't want to pay 2 subscriptions every month. But if I just pony up the cash and watch both networks, there's something to be done. You know, there's some great matches on there. Same thing with the New Japan Network. If you don't subscribe to the Fight Network to see all the independents, the New Japan channel, and WWE Network, I question whether you're a diehard or not. Unless you spend a whole lot of time on YouTube looking this stuff up without having to pay for it, which, I'll be honest, I do that sometimes too. But the big story this week about the Global Force Network was that it was supposed to launch, and it didn't work. I got a message popping up right here from one of our listeners talking about how he just got done watching the Lex Express as they went into SummerSlam taking on Yokozuna. I will be honest with you, it's funny you mentioned that one. I actually remember the Body Slam competition on the USS Intrepid, 1993, and I've watched that a ton of times too. I thought that was one of the coolest spots I've ever seen. You know, Lex Luger, he's the heel. Yokozuna's out there. They had the Body Slam contest with like all the NFL guys and weightlifters and some wrestlers. Crush got him up but couldn't slam him. Macho Man Randy Savage tried. Nobody could slam him. And I remember they played the video back of it, and Vince McMahon was on commentary. He's like, just when we thought it was over, a new man emerged. And they talk about the helicopter landing and somebody walking through the crowd. And it was Lex Luger dressed with the flag shirt, and he came in and body slammed Yokozuna, which I loved. So I love seeing that. That's actually from my buddy Harold out in St. Louis, my number one Patreon member so far. Thank you, Harold, as always. Got to give you your shout out, buddy, because you're the man. Yeah, I love that too. So, getting back to the Global Force Network, though, the stuff that we're watching, all of you that are listening right now, if you have the WWE Network, we need to be able to see stuff like that from Impact Wrestling. They've got a huge library. They put on great shows. For those who don't know a lot about the early years of TNA Impact Wrestling, they used to be a weekly pay-per-view show, $10 a week. You know, every week of the month, you could turn it on and watch something. And, you know, you had Ken Shamrock and you had, you know, Jeff Jarrett. You had an early R-Truth when he was Ron Killings. He was NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Stuff like that. It's awesome stuff. If you're an old WCW fan and you had The Wall, well, that guy went to Impact Wrestling and became world champion. And so, checking out those early matches, seeing the emergence of the X Division, people like Low Key and, AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn, like all these people who revolutionized cruiserweight wrestling, essentially, that is all going to be available on the Global Force Network. So this week they announced that they were going to launch, and then they had to delay it. It's not going to be out yet. And we need that. I think we as diehard wrestling fans, we need as much exposure, because here's the truth. If I asked you right now to go on your computer and go to YouTube and pull up your favorite match, you could probably do that pretty quickly. But if I gave you some random angle that took place 10 years ago on Impact Wrestling, you may not even remember that it happened. Yeah, how many people don't remember that Dusty Rhodes wrestled in Impact Wrestling? He did. Or that Macho Man Randy Savage wrestled for Impact Wrestling one time. Those matches are available. Diamond Dallas Page. How many people even remember who, in WWE, he was Marcus Corvon, but in Impact Wrestling, you had the Alpha Male, was a huge competitor for them, should have been world champion. They never gave him the title, but had great feuds with Jeff Jarrett and with Diamond Dallas Page, and people don't even remember who the Alpha Male is. Which drives me nuts, because he was so talented. It's a shame he stopped wrestling so young. So hopefully they get their network delay issues figured out, and we get some of their programming into a venue that's similar to the WWE network. For those who've been to the website, frowrestling.com, you'll notice that the show notes for tonight, the next thing I want to talk about is Sami Zayn. And I touched on him earlier a little bit, but the reality is, it cannot be overstated that Sami Zayn has been thoroughly misused by WWE for going on 6 months now. It's absolutely atrocious. This is a guy who, went on Raw, you could actually envision a scenario where he could win the Universal Championship. When you have people the size of Finn Balor who wins it, and even Seth Rollins isn't day and night larger than Sami Zayn, you could have bought him as a world champion contender. Now, on Raw, you couldn't do that today. Braun Strowman's too big, Brock Lesnar's too big, Roman Reigns is too big, John Cena's too big. Those four alone, and you throw in Samoa Joe and stuff like that, there would be no room for Sami Zayn on Raw right now as a world champion. But on SmackDown, when you're talking about AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura, Kevin Owens, you can buy him beating those guys if you build him correctly. This has been an ongoing issue with tons of talent on SmackDown. Ty Dillinger this past week finally had a stud match. Dillinger looked amazing, and you know what really sucks? WWE had AJ Styles win because he's embroiled in a big feud with Baron Corbin, but the reality is, if you were not a smart wrestling fan like we all are, and you were just a casual fly-by-nighter, you'd watch that match and be like, God, that Ty Dillinger guy is awesome. He should have won that match. And you'd be right, because it shouldn't be about the feud. Do you have any? I'm going to ask this and throw this out there, and if you want to shoot a comment up on I'll be honest with you, if you tune into the Spreaker channel when I do the Going Live episodes, your comments pop up immediately for me. I actually like that a little better than the hotline when I'm doing the actual live episodes. So, but the reality is if they took someone like Sami Zayn, if they took someone like Ty Dillinger, and they really built them strong, you'd have an opportunity to have main event style matches, WrestleMania quality matches. Anybody who can turn back the clock remembers, like it used to be in the old NWA days. I'd watch Worldwide Wrestling in the mornings, or World Class Championship Wrestling, or World Championship Wrestling Saturday nights at 6:05 on TBS. When you turn those on, if somebody wanted to challenge the world champion, they could walk out to the ring, ask for a referee, and challenge the champion. I've seen those matches. Barry Windham did that with Ric Flair the one time. It was an hour draw. It took up the whole show. But you didn't need a storyline. Somebody came out, you made a match, and somebody got over, and somebody didn't, and somebody won, somebody lost, but everybody was built because it felt authentic and real. And we don't have as much of that anymore. We have times where people show up and they're like, let's have a match right now. We had one of those like a week ago on Raw, but it doesn't feel the same because it's all just a piece of these huge storylines that we've been listening to that really haven't been that well thought out in the first place. If next week, Ty Dillinger walks out on Raw and jumps The Miz for no reason, he jumps The Miz and just says, I want that Intercontinental title. Are you telling me the Raw fans wouldn't go crazy? They're dying to see Ty Dillinger get a break. At the same time, can you just imagine if, there's a tag team match, you get Jason Jordan or I'm sorry, you have Chad Gable and Shelton Benjamin challenge for the tag titles, and Jason Jordan comes out and lays out Chad Gable because he has some beef with him because he went on to another tag team so quick, or something stupid like that. You don't have to have 6-month-long booked things to make them work. Now, I appreciate longer-term booking for the World Championship. I'm okay with that. But every little angle? Come on, man. We don't need all that. That leads to my next point. We're going to talk about the Fashion Police. We've been waiting to see what's going on with the Fashion Police for months. And I'll be honest with you, up until about 2 weeks ago, I actually thought they were doing a great job with it. It felt like real cinematic genius. And then I saw the news that they were thinking about making it Luke Harper and Eric Rowan who were messing with the Fashion Police. And I actually got very excited because I love Harper and Rowan. I think the two of them are significantly better than they're being used, especially Harper. But Rowan's got such a unique look. They should be on television every single week. We haven't seen them since like June. So I thought they were going to bring them back, and I was very excited. Now this week, I'm thoroughly disgusted. Because the word coming out now is that the team that's been messing with the Fashion Police is going to end up being Primo and Epico returning to the ring after Primo had his injury earlier in the summer. Really? That's what we've been waiting for with all these fashion files, is for Primo and Epico. And don't get me wrong, I actually like Primo and Epico, but when they first debuted on SmackDown, they brought them out and they looked tough. They came out, they tear down the champions and all this and that. But within a week, they were beaten, made to look like fodder for the tag team division again. They haven't been given any kind of serious push. So I don't want to see that. I would have been much happier seeing something along the lines of Harper and Rowan. It would have been more legitimate. They're tougher looking. They're bigger. They're stronger. In my opinion, they're better wrestlers. And it would have given the Fashion Police an opportunity to wrestle somebody who they were the underdogs. And if you had them win, it's not going to hurt Harper and Rowan any worse than you already have. And it could make the Fashion Police look like legitimate tag team champion contenders, which I thought they should have been earlier this summer to begin with. So, I'm going to move on from there because I'm venting again. See, that's the problem. I get all passionate about this stuff, and then I start to vent my frustration. But hopefully you guys don't mind too much. Alberto El Patron. He is returning to Global Force Wrestling. He's going to be at Bound for Glory. Here's the issue. He was originally scheduled to take on Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett has taken an indefinite leave of absence. The entire internet community has assumed that means Jeff Jarrett is just gone. He's essentially fired. He's not. Ed Nordholm was on one of their conference calls this week and made it very clear that he hopes Jarrett is back sooner rather than later. That sounds to me like he is in the plans to come back. Impact Wrestling, albeit under different ownership, has always been very understanding and welcoming of people who have various different types of personal issues. Kurt Angle with his substance abuse in the past, they were supportive. Jeff Hardy, they were supportive. So if the thought is some people think that Jeff Jarrett has some alcoholism issues going on. I don't believe that. I think he was playing a character in Mexico. I think he did a good job of playing that character in Mexico. But I don't know if Ed Nordholm understood that. And instead, Jeff Jarrett has been shown the door. Well, the plan was for Patron to face Jeff Jarrett at Bound for Glory. Now those plans are seemingly gone because Jarrett's not in the picture right now. We hope he comes back. But then the backup plan was Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio is supposed to defend Jeff Jarrett's honor by coming in and facing Patron, but now Rey Mysterio has broken off all conversation with Global Force Wrestling, and they had another conference call this week where that question was asked about what's going on with Rey Mysterio, and they made it clear that they have had no conversations with him, but that they would love for him to come in for Bound for Glory. Now, you have to ask yourself, does this mean that he is actually signed and we just don't know it and they're waiting to debut him at Bound for Glory? Or are they being honest? Have they really not spoken to Rey Mysterio lately? And if they haven't, they're stupid, because they need to bring in some talent to really make Bound for Glory a success. This Monday, they'll be announcing the location of Bound for Glory. I saw the pictures all over Instagram and Twitter. They were teasing that Bound for Glory would be held in India, that it'd be held in Great Britain, that it'd be held in the United States, and various other locations. I don't see how a company that's facing as many financial struggles, despite what Ed Nordholm would have you believe, he insists they're making tons of money. They're not. But despite all their financial struggles, I think that they need to do this in the United States. Their largest marketplace for potential additional fans is in the United States, despite how big their following is in India. I know that's a huge market for them, but we need to start selling some tickets, putting some butts in seats, and you need to do it here in the United States where you could run house shows whenever you need to. It takes a lot of booking and planning to go over to India and run program. So I would focus on the American audience. But I get the feeling from the fact that they teased it the way they did that they're planning on doing this overseas somewhere. I got to throw out, I'm on Facebook the other day, and you know how people put up all these memes anymore, and Dolph Ziggler has been doing this gimmick now for a couple weeks where he's coming out to different people's entrance music, and it's getting over with the fans. The fans are liking seeing who he's coming out as each week. Here's the thing. You've only got so many people. I mean, I know there's hundreds of wrestlers you could do, but the reality is fans don't care about a good percentage of those hundreds of wrestlers. You got to bring out entrances that really have an impact. So I have a booking idea for Dolph Ziggler, and I mean this. I know I say it all the time, but please give me your thoughts on this one, because I just want to know if I'm insane or if it actually would work for you. So Dolph Ziggler comes out to, what was it the first week? John Cena's music, Randy Savage's music, which I thought was disrespectful, and to somebody else, Naomi. And then we get to this week, and he comes out as Shane McMahon. He comes out as Bailey, and then the one that really, really burned. Again, it sounds like I'm a diehard. I'm not. It just coincidentally. He comes out as the Ultimate Warrior, and I thought that was incredibly disrespectful. I really didn't like that. If you're trying to get heat, there's ways to do it that you don't have to mock the dead, and that's back-to-back weeks you mock the dead. I have a problem with that. But that aside, if you're trying to build heat with him, I got your way to build heat. And I saw, and I can't even take credit for it, because I saw it hinted on Facebook, and I don't have a clue who it was. It was just some random person putting it up on Facebook. But think about this. Over the next couple weeks, Dolph Ziggler gets built up that he's finally decided on his new character. He'll be debuting his new character. And then you need to run an angle with somebody who's got real royal heat with Vince McMahon. Somebody who, whether it's Kevin Owens or somebody who's got major heat with the McMahon family. And you need to have Dolph Ziggler come out with CM Punk's music. Dressed like CM Punk, the whole nine, the mannerisms, the whole thing. If you're never going to bring CM Punk back, and you own the opportunity and the rights to his original music, and you have the opportunity because of your trademarks and things on your t-shirts and everything else, you can make a Dolph Ziggler looking CM Punk t-shirt and have him come out and really pop the fans. Make it seem to them. And if you were really smart, you would leak the news to the media that you're negotiating with CM Punk. Because Punk doesn't like to address WWE rumors anyways. He blocks them on social networking, so you may not even know right away. Go ahead and leak to the public that you're negotiating with CM Punk, even if it's not true. You know, look, fake news is out there all over the place anyways. People would be abuzz, and then you have CM Punk's music hit and have Dolph Ziggler walk out as CM Punk. And you don't have to call him CM Punk. That would be copyright infringement. Punk still owns the name. But he doesn't own all the music. He doesn't own all the images that WWE had copyrights for and trademarks for. I would do that. I would bring him out and I would make him the new version of CM Punk. Think about the heat that he would get for that. It's just my opinion. Please give me your feedback in the comments if you can. Going to move on to Asuka. Look, they announced this week that Asuka's going to Raw. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. Raw's women's division seems so stale right now. I'm thoroughly bored with it. I don't understand. We had such great memories last year with Charlotte and Sasha. We felt some excitement when it felt like it was going to be Sasha versus Bayley, and then they flopped on that. We really liked the debut of Nia Jax, and we were curious what her future held. A match with her and Charlotte would have been amazing, but they shifted Charlotte to SmackDown. Not complaining, because she does well on SmackDown when she's there. She hasn't been there for obvious reasons, but my point is, the Raw brand does need an injection of life, but I don't think that injection should be Asuka. My understanding is they want her to go there, win the Women's Championship, and not end her streak until she loses the Raw Women's Championship after a significant championship reign. My issue with that is very simple. Who are you going to put her with? Are you going to have her just totally destroy Nia Jax, or Alexa Bliss, or Bayley, or Sasha Banks, or Emma? Because every person I just named has lost countless matches this year. There's nobody who's been a standout stud who's just unbeatable. And that's what Asuka needs. Somebody who's unbeatable. And the reality is, if you go over to SmackDown, Charlotte really hasn't lost very much on SmackDown. And someone like Becky Lynch, who started out losing too much, really hasn't lost a lot lately either. She would have been better debuting on SmackDown, going against some people who, in my opinion, it's purely my opinion, are more over and who look like they are more legitimate threats to the Women's Championship. I don't like the idea of doing it on Raw. I really don't. I think it's a bad idea. But we're going to have to wait and see, because it sounds like Vince McMahon is just dead set on using Asuka on Raw, which every other person they've pulled up from NXT to Raw has just not seemed to work out. I'm hoping they find a way to make Asuka work. Speaking of people who have not worked out, and I was hoping would, Jason Jordan. Look, if you haven't learned anything about Jason Jordan the last couple weeks on Raw, facing John Cena and against Roman Reigns, he looks fantastic. He looks like a young Kurt Angle, and I know they want him to take off his shoulder straps like Angle and look like him because of the father-son storyline, which is completely stupid if you ask me, but he really can go. So I like that they've had him lose. At first I was a little shaky on that, but I like that they've had him lose because it keeps Reigns and Cena strong going into their pay-per-view match. But for Jason Jordan, you gave him the opportunity to look great. Absolute great. And so that can only help him in the future when he eventually gets a championship opportunity against The Miz, which was supposed to happen at SummerSlam. And now we haven't heard about it yet, and we're getting ready for the go-home episode. We still don't have an Intercontinental Championship match on the card. That's a misfire. That's just my opinion. John Cena and Braun Strowman. This was a missed opportunity. You know, I watched the match on Raw. I thought it went pretty well. I thought Cena looked like a scared cat running around the ring to start the match. I didn't like that. John Cena's always Mr., step up or step out of the way or whatever, and then you're running from Braun Strowman. Just take it right to him, because otherwise you look like a hypocrite. So the match itself was relatively solid. I have still not been able to wrap my mind around how Braun Strowman can pick up steps and waffle Cena with steps outside the ring and he doesn't get disqualified, but he drops him on the steps inside the ring and somehow he does. Just from my own understanding, and anybody who bought that book, like all the rules and how to break them in WWE or whatever it was that came out earlier in the year, if you look at it, I don't know what the rules are because I didn't buy the book, because Lord knows the rules don't matter anyways, but using an object, picking it up and slamming it into somebody's head, you would think would count as a disqualification. You used a foreign object. Now, I've seen countless wrestlers go outside the ring and slam or tombstone or choke slam or body slam or ram people into steps every week. Every week somebody gets thrown into the steps and they hit it with their shoulder and it goes flying across the floor. But this week, the steps are in the ring. It doesn't matter where they are. He didn't pick up the steps at the end of the match and hit John Cena with him. He dropped John Cena on the steps, which to me, I don't know how that's a disqualification. Now, the hit outside the ring should have been, but they didn't do it there. They shouldn't have done it later. Now, my understanding is they're doing this because they want to open up the opportunity for a future Braun Strowman versus John Cena feud. But God, that's so far away. You already know Cena's going away to film Bumblebee and Lord knows what other movies, Shazam and every other thing. And he's going to come back in January. He's going to win the World Championship, take it to WrestleMania, or take it to the Elimination Chamber is actually what I understand is the plan. Take it to Chamber, lose the title to Nakamura, who's going to defend against AJ Styles. Like, that's the plan for SmackDown, supposedly. So, we don't even know what Cena's going to be doing a year from now. So laying the seeds for this future feud was kind of stupid to me. It's a missed opportunity. This should have been a great match. It should have been a good half hour to 35 minutes. This should have consumed Raw's broadcast. Instead, it was an afterthought at the end of the show that could have gone a lot better and really left me with my head scratched. I just don't understand. Going to move on to the New Day. For those who heard, Kofi Kingston injured his ankle in Hawaii in a match this week. The update on that is apparently is not serious. He'll wrestle the rest of his matches all weekend and hopefully take it easy heading into Tuesday night. But the New Day have recaptured the SmackDown Tag Team Championship, and we predicted this weeks ago. Remember, they're supposed to win like 10 Tag Team Championships so they could break the record that the Dudleys or whoever owns of 9 championships. I'm fine with breaking the record. I hate seeing titles bounce around like ping pong balls. I think that's stupid. They did it with the Cruiserweight title. They did it with the Tag Team title. They did it with the Women's Championship on Raw. It's ridiculous. And I actually suspect that the Women's Championship on SmackDown will change hands in the much sooner rather than later. So I'm just frustrated with the booking of the champion. So I really was not thrilled to see the New Day win the titles the way they did as soon as they did. I think they should have saved it for the pay-per-view, and that would have given the Usos a little longer reign and add a little credibility to the New Day's victory. Instead, it's just like the Tag Team Championship is just bouncing around. It's really frustrating. And the last thing I want to talk to you guys about this week is my reaction to Zack Ryder. So we've been talking for months now about how they needed to break up the Hype Bros, and it looks like they're starting the seeds of that now. So the Hype Bros go to the ring this week. They have their match with Gable and Shelton Benjamin. They lose the match, and at the end of the match, you've got the Hype Bros are in the ring. They're there to shake the hands of the victors, and as the handshakes are taking place, you have Zack Ryder walk out of the ring, leaving his partner behind and clearly looking like he will be the heel. And I actually appreciate that. Mojo Rawley, I don't think, is obviously ready to be a heel. He seems so green. I mean, he seems more green than the Ultimate Warrior. He really does. But Zack Ryder obviously is being strategically positioned for a heel turn, which I'm fine with. But God, please push this guy. He is that good. Zack Ryder has been, I mean, we talked about it earlier with like Sami Zayn, Ty Dillinger, people like that. Zack Ryder's been in the company for so many years and been horribly mismanaged. He's not the only one, like we said earlier. You got people like Natalya, who takes 7 years to get a second women's championship run. Why? I don't understand. Like, I don't remember any women's championship feud in the last 7 years that was so legendary that Natalya couldn't have been a part of the mix, especially once there was a brand split. So Zack Ryder looks like he's going heel, and God willing, give him a great angle, because that guy deserves it. I'm so tired of seeing him get buried. We should see Darren Young coming back to television shortly. That should be exciting, because I guarantee he'll be joining Titus Worldwide, because they don't know what to do with Darren Young except put him with Titus O'Neil. Dear God, please do not bring Bob Backlund back with him. We don't need that. But that's the news for this week. I'm going to jump into the fan questions, because I have 3 that I've chosen from all the questions I got this week. And I want to address these 3 for very specific reasons. I think they're the ones that I personally can elaborate the most on. And some of them are the ones that I found to be just ridiculously intriguing. Starting with Big Cass when he returns. The idea being, and this was presented to me in one of the messages this week, that if Cass returns, do you pair him with real-life girlfriend Carmella, ditch James Ellsworth, and it gives him a whole new layer to his character? And the nice thing for him is he'd be on the road with the love of his life, supposedly, and fans would buy that. They don't buy the James Ellsworth thing. People are sick of seeing him with Carmella to begin with. He looks ridiculous. Put him at 205 Live and let him actually compete. But I think that Big Cass, with all his issues, not being able to speak like a heel, he doesn't look like a heel, he doesn't wrestle like a heel, I think pairing him with Carmella would actually be a fantastic idea. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think when I read that, I had not thought about that before, but I think that would be a great way to bring him back. You got to realize that his return date is going to be right around the next brand split, or whatever you want to call it, Superstar Shake-Up or Fantasy Draft or whatever they call it next year. It's going to be right in that time period. So it could be very easy to transition Cass over to SmackDown and let him work with Carmella, which I think would be a great idea. So thank you to the fan that sent that question. Next question I want to get to is about Nakamura, and whether or not, if WWE books him to defeat Jinder Mahal at Hell in a Cell, if that'll appease the fans. And the truth is, I don't think so. I actually, and this may sound strange, but I actually think the fans, as much as they hate Jinder Mahal, I think they hate his character. I'm trying to think how to say this. Jinder Mahal is over. He's over big. People tune in to watch his matches, not because they want to see him wrestle, because they want to see him lose. And when he doesn't lose, people get mad. And when those people get mad, then they want to see him lose even more. They'll pay more money, and they'll go in and they'll try even harder to watch to see him lose. And I think if I was WWE, I hate saying this because, God, I'm a diehard Nakamura fan, and I want him to have that championship so bad. But I don't want to see Nakamura win that title until WrestleMania. I want to see Nakamura lose this match in some schmozzy way. And I know I'm a hypocrite because I said in the past that I really wanted to not see Jinder Mahal win any more matches in crappy manner. I wanted to see him legitimately beat somebody. But you're in the hell, and if you put him in the cell, you could actually make a case for him coming out with a championship and Nakamura's character not being harmed quite that bad. But it's such a double-edged sword. I don't want to see Nakamura keep losing because that'll hurt his character. But I really think in this scenario, I don't want to see Jinder Mahal lose the championship because I don't think it'll do enough to move the needle on SmackDown. What'll do something to move the needle on SmackDown, and it's just my opinion, is getting AJ Styles into that world title picture again. I love the U.S. title, don't get me wrong. I think it's nice that he has a belt. For those who didn't see this week, I can't believe this slipped my mind till now. AJ Styles originally wrestled for NWA Wildside Wrestling. It's an outfit in the southern part of the United States, Georgia area, and down that way, Tennessee. And he showed up at one of their house shows this week, brought the United States Championship with him. He was on display, and it was like a Legends reunion of NWA Wildside, and he went back. And I thought, what a great thing for WWE to allow him to go back to say thank you to the fans who made him who he is today, and to really give back in a way. And I thought it was a great ambassadorship for WWE, and I thought it helped put NWA Wildside in the spotlight for a few days, which I thought was awesome. I really thought they deserved that. So I think if you want to pop the fans, you want to appease the fans, that belt's got to be around AJ Styles' waist, the face that runs the place. He really does. He is the biggest draw on that brand. So if you want to draw the most fans, you got to give it to him. Now, Nakamura can be and will be, but I think that's AJ Styles defending the World Championship against Nakamura at WrestleMania. That's what I see as being the best use of Nakamura winning the championship. This isn't going to do anything at Hell in a Cell. It really does. And then they may give him the title. If they do, I'm not going to be crying about it. I love Nakamura. But I actually don't like the idea. Because I think what they'll do is if they give it to Nakamura at Hell in a Cell, some schmaz ending will give it right back to Jinder Mahal 2 weeks later on SmackDown, because he's got to be the champion heading into the Royal Rumble to lose it to John Cena. It's just my opinion. And my last question I want to get to. WWE, in the past, had diehard fans during the 80s when they were running 2 shows a night, one on the East Coast, usually one on the West Coast. You know, they'd be running Seattle, Washington the same night they're running Philadelphia. They would have, Hulk Hogan running with the world title in Philly while you had Tito Santana running with the Intercontinental title on the West Coast. Or whatever, Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan. The NWA had people like Ric Flair. These are all people who were listed in this question, and I thought the person really hit the nail on the head with the talents. If you think about 1980s wrestling, the names that jump to your mind are usually Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, people like that, Sting. Then when you go to the 90s, that's where we see the Attitude Era really emerge. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. You get to see Triple H become who he becomes. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. You go to WCW, that's where Hall and Nash become a factor. Hogan makes his big heel turn. Lex Luger. Like, you have people that you can directly identify with. The segments of the audience. You give people who identify themselves as, I was a fan in the 80s, or I was a fan in the 90s. And then even when you get into the 2000s, there's people who... they're Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. That's their guys. Rob Van Dam, Jeff Hardy. And you get to now, and the question that was posed was, how does WWE appeal to the people who were fans in those era now? And here's the thing. We're in a difficult time right now in WWE. John Cena has been there for 12 years, but the reality is he's 40 years old. In terms of being a professional wrestler, that's actually still relatively young. In the last 12 years, we've seen people like Batista, CM Punk. We've seen the emergence of people like Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, Kazuchika Okada in New Japan. Even if you go with Ring of Honor and places like that, you've seen Jay Lethal really become a star. EC3 down in Impact Wrestling, and Bobby Lashley. And so what I think is challenging for WWE right now, a lot of the names that I just mentioned are not in WWE. I think Matt Riddle is about as popular as any wrestler in the world right now. Will Ospreay, Zack Sabre Jr., like, everybody knows who these guys are. And it's not because of WWE. And so for WWE to appeal, they have to have stars that transcend the sport the way Stone Cold Steve Austin did, the way The Rock did, the way Hulk Hogan did, the way Randy Savage did. And right now, John Cena transcends the sport of professional wrestling. He's not just a wrestler. He is really the movie star. He really is the Hollywood starlet. He can be on the Today Show and everything else. He is your best opportunity, but he's not the only one. So here's the issue. AJ Styles, in my opinion, is the biggest star in WWE right now. I'm not talking about biggest draw. That's Brock Lesnar. I'll give Brock his due. But Brock Lesnar doesn't love the sport. He doesn't. He goes in, collects a paycheck, shows up 5-6 times a year, and then he goes home. So he's not the big draw because he doesn't draw the rest of the time when he's not there. He's only the biggest draw when he's there, and he's not there very often. But AJ Styles is there every week. You know? Kevin Owens is there every week. Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt, Finn Balor. Every single one of those people I just mentioned. And I'll say it, I mean it, it kills me to have to say it, but the reality is I've got a newfound respect for The Miz this week. The Miz this week moved into third place, passing the Honky Tonk Man for the most combined days ever being Intercontinental Champion. The Miz is very young as far as wrestlers go. And if he chooses to stay in the business, there's a very good likelihood that he will pass the others that are in front of him on the list. All the way up to Pedro Morales, who's number 1 with like 619 days or something of that nature. And I really hope he does, because I think he deserves it. The only problem with that is if he's Intercontinental Champion for that long, it means he's not World Champion. I think he deserves that too. But back to the question at hand is how do you appeal to those previously segments of the audience with today's stars? And I think the issue is, and the problem is, the answer is make new stars that transcend the sport. But the problem with that is AJ Styles is the best wrestler in the world, but he's not a movie star. He's really not. You've got other talent. You know, CM Punk left, Batista left. He can't do anything with them anymore. You know, Batista had a shot. If he was still in wrestling, he transcends the sport because he's a movie star too. But he's gone, so he doesn't work. Brock Lesnar transcends wrestling into mixed martial arts, but that's it. And he really doesn't do that anymore either. So Brock's not your answer. Braun Strowman. So I've been building up to this moment. Braun Strowman is your only hope right now of really drawing in people who become disenfranchised with wrestling because they loved their 1980s wrestling, or they loved their 90s Attitude Era, or they loved the early 2000s. Braun Strowman has been grown organically. He's a huge, for those who don't know his background, he is a former World's Strongest Man competitor. That guy's a beast. You can go online, do YouTube videos of him doing like these deadlifts and all these lifting competitions that are just insane. So he already has a background being a public figure prior to being a wrestler. Now he's a wrestler. He's supposed to be a bad guy. And I don't care who you are, how you spin it to me, he's not a bad guy. Because the fans freaking love him. And all it's going to take for Braun is to transcend the sport by going anywhere else. And put him in the next Marine movie. Make him a jacked up bad guy in the next Guardians of the Galaxy. Do something. He's young, he's buff, and he is the man. He's your golden goose. If you could build Braun the right way. Look, I know people think Roman Reigns is the answer. Roman Reigns has a great Hollywood look. He's got the tattoos and the muscles and everything else. But the guy has no charisma whatsoever. I don't know who the genius was, Vince McMahon, who decided to make Roman Reigns the second coming of Hulk Hogan, but he's not. He's just not, because he can't talk. John Cena could talk, but he's getting older. But that's it. Who else do you have who can cut a promo like The Rock? The Rock could walk back tomorrow with no script in hand, walk out and just blow people away with a promo. That's what you need. Somebody who brings mainstream media in because they're that gosh darn interesting. And that's what you have with Braun Strowman. You have authentic interest from the fans in a wrestler who's just incredibly talented. So that is my wrap of the fan questions for the week. I do notice that good buddy Harold over here has noticed that he had a hand in the questions this week. Absolutely, man. I got to take care of the important people. Harold sends me so many great questions. He really is a huge part of the show, so I always want to thank him. He is amazing, and so is my buddy over in Hatfield. You guys are awesome. And I wish, at times, I try to give shout-outs to others, but you got to tell me your name. I am going to give a shout-out tonight to a young guy who literally asked me personally, he's like, can you do me a favor? Can you give me a shout out on your next episode? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do that. And that's a young man named Anthony Cardi, who he's a great young guy, and he's trying to get his own YouTube channel up and running. And he was so nervous when he asked me if I would give him a shout out on the episode. So Anthony Cardi, this is your shout out. And if anybody wants to check out his YouTube channel just to give him some views and help my little buddy out, that would be awesome. His YouTube channel itself, he's a skateboarder, so he likes to put that stuff out there for people to look at. You can find by going to my YouTube channel and clicking on my follows, the people that I go for. He's in there. So are a lot of other people that you should be checking out, because they got some funny stuff out there. But that being said, I will make sure to try to get you guys a prediction episode this week for the pay-per-view, No Mercy. I want to make sure that I get to any questions you guys shoot me on the Pro Wrestling Sound Off line, 267-642-1160. Make sure you give me questions, comments, concerns. Give me the feedback on my booking of Dolph Ziggler. Should he be the next CM Punk? I'd be okay with that. But if you don't like that idea, tell me, because that tells me where my creative juices are flowing. And that way, when I go to these shows at the Worldwide Wrestling Alliance, if I ever get the wonderful opportunity to talk to the owner about what I would do booking-wise, I would love to be able to know that I'm talking to him from an intelligent, informed perspective. So I love to get your feedback on that. That is all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next time. We're going to run down all the latest news and rumors. We'll talk about predictions for No Mercy. Special thanks, as always, go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all the music and sound effects I use in each show. Today's podcast is sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with sketchy people. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to frowrestling.com and clicking the icon in the middle of the screen, and to alleyrepair.com. Alley Repair, today, they are one of the only companies in the country that still services all your classic skee ball machines, as well as pinball and arcade games. If you want first quality workmanship, this guy is the man. Go to alleyrepair.com to service all of your electronic machines. Be sure to shoot over our website at frolifeplanning.com for all your higher education needs, whether that's you want to get into a college or university, or you need to get some training to change to a new career. Fro Life Educational Planning specializes in helping you find that next path in your educational journey. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning, it's for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. And if you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to thesportsjunkies101.com. That's THA, sportsjunkies101.com for the latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Until next time, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and I will see you in our next episode. Take care.